Okay, so let's go ahead and start the second part of this chapter. Chapter 14, section 2 starts to talk about the worksheet. So if you do me a favor and turn in your textbooks with me to page number 432 and 433, you'll be able to take a look and follow along with me as we work our way through this section. The first section of this, or before we even talk about the section of it, let's go back and talk about the worksheets. And do you remember, if you remember, we worked with this a long time ago. And if you want to take a look at it, you can flip back into the textbook to the plastic pages that we were dealing with back in chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8 in that area. But let's ask and answer a couple questions. What do you remember about the worksheet? What are the parts of it? Why do we do the worksheet? Those are some things that we need to make sure we cover. What's the name of the account? And if we take a look at it on page 432 and 433, we take a look at the account. Everything above that certain account goes on the balance sheet. Everything below that account and including that account goes on the income statement. We'll come back and visit that later on. If we look at the columns, we have the trial balance columns. What are those columns used for? We have the adjustment columns. What are those columns used for? We have the income statement and the balance sheet columns, and what are those used for? We have what are adjustments? What do we use adjustments for? How do we calculate them? That's what a big part of this chapter is about, or this section, the next couple of sections are about. And then finally, how do we calculate net income, net loss? And that's a little bit different than what we've done in the past, and we'll get into that later on as we move our way through these different sections in here. So the first section of this is talking about just simply the trial balance. All we're simply going to do is we're going to go back into our general ledger. We're going to look at our specific accounts and we're going to record the amounts that correspond with each of those accounts. So for example, if I went back and flipped my general ledger account and looked at the cash account, I would see a debit on there for $29,080.28. I just simply put that on the debit side, and I would do that for all of the accounts. Now sometimes you have an account that doesn't have a balance in it, so you just write that account in there and you leave that account at 0 or you leave it blank and we come at it. So what you see in front of you is just simply the top half of the worksheet filling out the trial balance columns. Let me take a look at the bottom half of that. We do the same thing. We go all the way down. We find the purchase account, write the number for purchases all the way down to utilities expense, and record all those. Obviously, again, you see some accounts there: insurance expense, supplies expense. They don't have balances in there, but we write them in there because we're going to use those later for their adjustments. Now, what we simply do after that then is we just simply total it. So we're going to total the columns of the trial balance. And you'll notice then that when we get those correct and then we get them to equal each other, we double underline and saying that at least this part of the worksheet is complete. Now, why do we do this? We do this to make sure that our general ledger is in balance, make sure everything's good before we start to move things across the sheet. Because once we begin to do the adjustments and move things across the sheet, things begin to get more and more difficult if there's a mistake in one of these two columns. So the first part of this unit, or the first part of this chapter, is just simply making sure that we record our general ledger accounts into our worksheet. So go ahead and do that on your own, 14-2, and we'll come back and start the adjustments in the next section.